The Wild West. What's better than random angelic horses running around? Or the wonderful exquisite creatures that lay upon the land?
Moo.
Or what's more country than cowboy hats? Most importantly, when the rules were broken. A time where you could bend them. Remember, you're dealing with a murder. Does it work? Hello? Okay, there we go. Okay. Oh, 1 second. Oh. Hello, my name is Have a Blessed Day. Sorry I haven't done this in a while. Today we will be reviewing the murder of Abdulazeez. This footage you are about to see was done through the means of threat by the defendant of the case named Blessed. Please see the evidence. Further evidence looking into the case has deduced the possibility of the victim Abdulazeez to be suffering from schizophrenia or schizoaffective episodes. While others have deduced a likely conclusion he has seen phantoms, or what the populace call ghosts, we believe in our study that these two diagnoses are not mutually exclusive. We believe the victim Abdulazeez was also suffering from oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD for short. Please see respected expert in the field, Russell A. Barkley.
To begin, let's distinguish between two kinds of defiance or non-compliance. The first is relatively normal. I refer to this as simply non-compliance because it indicates a passive resistance or failure to obey a parent who has given an instruction or a command. Basically, the child is simply ignoring the parent.
His history calls, as appears to me without reason, an eclipse of the sun through a third-hand source, Thallus Africanus Sicilinus. It appears that a historian named Thallus made note of the darkness that occurred at the time of Jesus. Although this text cannot be ignored, it is not very useful. So not even mentioning the crucifixion, just mentioning the darkness that would have just been oral traditions being passed down of people trying to propagate this mythological idea of the darkness coming all of a sudden, and then Jesus dying, and then, like I said, the resurrection of the dead saints, which we're not going to get any adjustment for, I'm pretty sure, right? So when it comes to Thallus, Suitones, Marabar Sarapion, I knew you were going to bring these guys up.
We would like the record to show that Blessed Day did indeed not make claims on Marabar Sarapion or Thallus or others. In fact, it would be impossible, considering Abdulazeez was the one that went first in the debate.
What time period was Irenaeus writing?
Irenaeus was in the year 180, but
Okay,
Basileans.
would you agree that that's late second, early third century writing?
No, I
Yes
wouldn't
or
say.
no?
I wouldn't say this is talking. I would say this is a belief that was held by the earliest.
As we can see, somebody in cross-examination that decides to ask their own question and answer it by themselves on their own regards is schizotypical behavior. Also, I have decided to slow down the clip here, but it is important to note, if you have to replay it, that's fine. We are dealing with the reincarnation of Busta Rhymes.
Now we have Ignatius of Antioch, right? So I'm going to make this challenge right here in my rebuttal. Ignatius of Antioch. So Ignatius of Antioch, right? Who was alive in the year 30 or born in the year 30. And he was 3 years old when Jesus ascended into the heavens. And he was writing to these letters, or to these different provinces, to these different cities, a letter to Cimmerians, a letter to the Trallians, a letter to the Magnesians, and a letter to the Philadelphians. And he mentions that every single one of these, or in every single one of these cities, there's a mention of people denying the crucifix. And this is dated in the first. This is going to be the 5th century. He's writing these letters around the year 106.
You're a fucking idiot.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not spending time on this. There's no way. 106 is 2nd century. No, I'm not doing it. On to the next evidence.
I want you to concede your religion, fool. over the sources that all denied the crucifix within the first century, within the second century, within the third century, the people who had apostolic succession. So I'm going to go over this book, Found Christianities, by M. David Litwa, where he goes over the Basilidians, and he says the Basilidians had apostolic succession running through Glossius to Peter to Matthias to Jesus, right?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
When we look into what actually M. David Litwa writes in Found Christianities, it is not at all what Abdulazeez is claiming. So either A, he's dishonest, B, he's having schizoaffective episodes, or C, he has the illiteracy rates of Floyd Mayweather. So for example, if Basilides was a group in the first century with early Christian ties, why do they have no confirmed knowledge of the Book of Acts? And also, notice how he tried, a keyword tried, to situate himself in a tradition of apostolic succession running through Peter, according to Litwa. On page 121, we see the appearance of Simon of Cyrene that was quite mentioned by Abdulazeez, but notice also in the footnotes, those fancy little references, how these documents are found in the 2nd century, not the 1st, in the Nag Hammadi library, if they are to be used for interpretation. And finally, going through the book, as we can see, David Litwa does not make any mention of the Basilidians being a 1st century group, or Litwa sourcing this at all. It does not seem to exist.
Purpose was to provide each subject with the same dull job, so each would have a similar negative experience.
The year's 1954, and Leon Festinger finally gets to test his cognitive dissonance theory. Well, what's cognitive dissonance? It's simply when you hold two conflicting beliefs or behaviors leading to the feeling of discomfort. This feeling of discomfort actually leads us to an interesting proclamation, because it causes, based off of its psychological phenomena, disorders, or one could basically say it leads to fallacies or fallacious reasoning in the brain. So for example, like the fallacy of composition, or for the more popular terminology that's derived from it, the forest for the trees and missing them.
I want you to concede your religion, fool.
All right. Do you agree that every ancient historical document has a polemical, religious, or theological motive?
Yeah, most of the time, yes.
Okay. So you would you also agree that majority to all of ancient historical documents are not infallible documents?
Of course.
Okay.
They're very fallible.
So why then are you arguing that, why are you committing the fallacy of composition then? If you're saying that if the Gospels err in something like a particular prophecy of Jesus, and therefore Jesus wasn't crucified, which is our conversation.
Okay, so can I respond?
Any good story needs a comedic proclamation throughout the course. This is done for psychological reasons, such as lightening the mood from the melancholy feeling developed. We are dealing with a murder, of course.
With 20
Yeah, of
seconds?
course.
So if you're going to take the theological perspective, and if you're going to believe in biblical inerrancy,
No,
then
real quick. I'm not
you
talking
can take it
theological.
poison.
We're talking historical today, baby girl.
Yeah. So if the gospel, so if you say I don't believe, so if you say this debate is going to be about the historicity of the crucifix and the early attestation of what actually happened to Jesus, and we will view this from a theological perspective. Now we're looking at this from a theological perspective with 20 seconds. So if you're going to take the theological perspective, it's crucified if we look at it from a theological perspective, right? That I have Maddie Mikulski. I bring you scholarship, Maddie Mikulski. I believe Jesus made a false prophecy here. Then I'd say, okay, then fine, you can take your historical source. But I say that there's reconciliation with this, with other people saying it was Simon of Cyrene who was on the cross, and he was the one who was drinking from the gall of the vinegar. So I would say very simple, very simple.
Where's the first mention of somebody like Simon of Cyrene taking the cross that we have?
Okay, beautiful. In Irenaeus talks about people within his own time saying that the Basilidians. and the Epistle of Barnabas, which I never bring up in any of my any of my sources or any of the conjecture that I was bringing up. We're going to see historically is that there's conjecture pertaining to what people are claiming actually happened to Christ. So some people are going to claim that Simon of Cyrene was crucified, right? Point. Us going in circles about Tacitus and Josephus, even though like I already rebutted it in my first 15 minutes, is like pretty laughable, and it shows that you weren't like ready for this debate. Okay, so not only do we have the Gospel of Judas that is dated to the year 150 to 180, 2nd century. So we're going to go over denial sources, because he said, what did he say? He said, only the Quran, chapter 4, verse 157, right? Did not kill him, nor did they crucify him, but we're not going to commit the genetic fallacy.
Conceding answering this question, basically. That's
How am I conceding answering
answering
the question just so that I can answer it? How does that mean conceding?
Because you're agnostic on it. Right now you're telling me I have
No,
this
I'm not
source,
agnostic on it. I just said if it breaks his 20-second parameter, because what he likes to do is rant for 2 minutes, ask me a question randomly because he realizes he has to do it because it's cross-examination, and that's what he does. I can do it for him if he gives me over 20 seconds. That's what I said.
Paul's congregation. So this is
again, was there a question there, or are you just making statements again?
I wasn't gonna die. Maybe
is there a question here somewhere?
Yeah, you said what?
Is there a question here somewhere? This is cross-examination, not you rebutting
Yeah. So Ignatius dealing with Christians. No, I'm saying that your point on them being in the 2nd century doesn't hold up because this was a belief that would have been well solidified within the 1st century that you already conceded to.
Okay.
So, next question.
I never once conceded to that. There's just dishonest.
You said that there was Christians who believed in Ignatius' congregation that Jesus only appeared to have suffered. You said
in the
that
2nd century, according to your writings by the church fathers.
Why do you say 7th century? Why do you say 7th century?
We have foot, slogging over Africa. Foot, slogging over Africa. Boot, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11, 5, 9 and 20 miles today. 4, 11, 17, 32 the day before. Boot, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. Don't look at what's in front of you. Boot, moving up and down again. Men go mad with watching them. There's no discharge in the war. Count the bullets in the bandoliers. If your eyes drop, they will get atop of you.